Hello and welcome to Tech Time Today. I am your host, Jeff Welpley, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about the free web economy. Back in December, so December 2024, I gave a presentation on SEO in 2025, and all the crazy changes going on in the world of SEO. And one of the central things I talked about in that talk was this concept of the magic SEO triangle, of this relationship between the user, the website, and search engines. For what we're talking about today, it is a version of this because we're going to talk about it purely from the side of economics. So between a user and a website or web app, the user has a problem and a application is the answer, the solution to that problem. So the user is getting value from the website by solving whatever their problem or question is, right? So that's obvious. And the website, when an actual human is navigating through your website, you have the opportunity to convert their eyeballs, convert them viewing your website into money in many different ways. Ads, get them to sign up for a newsletter, yada, 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 whatever. Between search engines and users, it's also relatively straightforward. A user will have many, many, many different problems and many different questions. It's helpful to have just one user interface, one entry point to ask that. And the value that the users give to the search engines, obviously, are, again, eyeballs. And that can be converted to money through ads, selling user behavior data, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the value between search engines and the websites, traditionally, especially early 2000s, the search engines wouldn't have any, like the actual solution. They wouldn't actually have the answer themselves. They would just have a link to send the user to the website, and then the user would get their value there. And so search engines are a great way of acquiring users for the website. So you have this mutually beneficial economy. Websites were able to build things and provide free content and free services because of this specific setup, because they knew they could eventually get users through search engines, through these sort of set of relationships. So this is the core of the free economy. The thing that's different here is that when you talk about these AI interfaces, so let's forget about Google for a second and just talk about, ChatGPT or even Gemini. The thing is, they don't send users to the website. It is true that if you keep all of the users and you don't send them anywhere, then yes, you can make more money in the short term. But I don't think it's as simple as that. I don't think it's an evil thing that Google and others are trying to do. I think it's actually more so a byproduct of what AI is all about, providing that one UI for any question and problem. Even before generative AI stuff was available over the past 2-3 years, Google has had instant answers, has had other versions of providing the thing to users without sending them to the website. They've tried it out over the years in a number of ways because, well, some of it's for money reasons, but some of it is because of the original purpose of giving the best possible user experience to the user who comes to them with questions or problems. And in a theoretical world, if you are talking to an AI, the best possible user experience is probably that you ask it a question and it gives you an answer, that you have a problem and it gives you a solution. The best possible experience is not that I'm talking to Jarvis and Jarvis starts sending me to random websites that I've never seen before to try to figure out what's going on there. But that doesn't change the fact that this fundamentally breaks this system in a way that has not been fully felt. We've gotten to this stage one. So this is where we're at in time-wise, where the newer generative AI interfaces have almost completely, practically, eliminated sending any users to websites, but they still are taking all of the content. Once you have that, some websites in particular that heavily rely on search engine traffic, they lose their eyeballs. And so if they don't have that, no eyeballs, okay. So then eventually the website can't function anymore because they aren't getting what they need. And then if you extrapolate that and it keeps on going enough time, then the quality and the ability of these central user interfaces to solve the person's question or problem starts to dry up. Without that stream of new creative content, the quality of these generative AI interfaces just are going to have a ceiling. For right now, it works to not send users because there still is people creating quality content from sort of the remnants of the old system that's still living on to some degree, but it's not going to be that way forever. How many times have you clicked on one of these sources links? I gotta imagine that for most people, it's zero or close to zero. And the reason is because it's antithetical to how AI is supposed to function, how generative AI is supposed to function. It's supposed to, or in its ideal form, actually give you the answer. It's not the same thing as a search engine. It just isn't. It's not something where you just have a link and you have to go to the other website to get your answer. It should be that it has your answer and then you can interact with it. You can ask it more questions. You can go like a whole back and forth. That's the whole point, right? So any sort of user experience where users more than like a very small number of users are actually getting routed to a completely different website would actually mean that there's something wrong with the AI, if that makes sense. So the value from the free web economy 1.0 was search engines sending users to websites. It just can't be that for the web economy 2.0. And that's where I really want to get into it in a separate video, but I'll sort of tease it a little bit that there is a bunch of different approaches that you could take. And the reason why I created this video, the reason why I'm thinking about it, I'm going to Google I/O next week. I know I'm going to be talking to a lot of other Googlers and other web and tech experts there. And I think this is something that we all have to get on board with and solve together. I don't think it's going to be one company or one person that comes up with the solution per se. But I do think that it's one of those kind of almost like open source community based things that if there's a good idea, it can grow over time and be something that, if it's seen as a mutually beneficial thing, I think that the different companies involved will latch onto it eventually because it is mutually beneficial. It is in their best interest to figure out a good way to provide value back so that they continue to get the value from all these different providers. You could think of all sorts of different ways of rev share, of different ways that they have to actually explicitly pay money to providers when they use their functionality or show their content. That is a solution, and we'll get into that. It can be tricky. There could be ones that aren't directly isn't directly a money exchange, that it's the value is indirect, you gain more access to users. If somebody uses our app functionality, then maybe the agreed upon protocol that doesn't exist yet, that this is what I'm talking about, is something that we all have to work on and think about. Maybe the provider gets some additional level access to those users so that they can follow up with them and whatever. I don't know. There's a couple of different ways. I'm still trying to think of all the different things to lay out there myself, and I don't know what the right answer is. And I'll again get into that a lot more in the next episode. But I wanted to, in this video, lay out the problem, make sure that it's very clear, and I hope that I would think that most people who see this, who kind of understand how the web has worked, over these past decades, can see that it is something that is broken, and it's an issue right now already, but it's going to be a really big issue if we don't figure out something, a solution for going forward.